Hi, I'm Margaret, and welcome to Garden School. Well, I was thinking about something this morning as I was walking around the yard. When is mulch too much, or what situations should maybe mulch not be applied for the wintertime or should be removed? So I wanted to take a look at that today with you. Now, here I've got a beautiful Japanese maple, and it's dropped all of its leaves right down onto the ground where I have a bed of sedum underneath. Let's take a look at that.
I love to use sedum and other succulent ground covers in little beds, and they do really well for keeping the weeds down, and they look great just about 365 days of the year. But all the leaves that dropped from this Japanese maple right down on here have really covered a lot of this area, and so what I'm going to do is just remove much of the leaf layer. A little bit's going to be fine to maintain, but I do want the leaves there to receive light so they can continue to photosynthesize during the winter time. So I'm going to have a little bit of a job here to work on, just gently raking. I might just use a gloved hand to remove some of the leaves here where they've fallen super thick, and then we can see the beautiful green, and that should be protected. Now, if we get super cold temperature, a really super hard freeze, maybe down into the 20 or so, we might see some damage on some of these. I'm going to we'll just have to see what happens on that. It has been damaged before in a really cold winter, and it's come back really well. Oh, anyway, I've got a little job to do. I'll work on that. Another thing I don't want to have too much mulch on fallen leaves or pine needles is on like a woolly thyme or a creeping thyme. Now that's what's edging this bed right here, and you can see I've pulled most of the mulch away, and I have mulched the rest of that bed just mainly to keep the weeds down. But as the part where it's covered by the creeping thyme, the woolly thyme, I'm going to let that remain mostly uncovered, and that should be protected well even when we get down into some pretty low temperatures.
When it comes to fruit trees, apples, pears, I'm going to really clean up underneath these trees as much as possible to remove the fallen leaves for a couple of reasons. Apple scab, which seems to be just about everywhere, will persist in those fallen leaves, and then the spores of that fungus will be present in the spring as the temperature's warm. We'd prefer not to have that. So I'm going to remove as many of the fallen leaves as I can. Another thing is that those fallen leaves can harbor the insects that really bother our apples. Apple maggot, codling moth, perhaps. Though some of the stages of those insects can overwinter in that leaf layer. So if you wanted to mulch under here, under apple trees, you might just consider fresh bark as weed control maybe. But I'm going to remove the leaves. This is a situation where it's easy to do, just a few trees. Remove those leaves and get them out of your landscaping. Then you won't be harboring so much of the fungal spores or the insects. Blueberries are something you also want to clean up really well. There are fungal diseases that once the diseased fruit drops to the ground, the fungus then lives in the soil or in a mulch layer on the soil. So you want to really clean that up first. Any dropped fruit, any leaves, I would just rake them all out, get rid of them. And then if you do want to mulch, use something that is clean, like maybe a clean sawdust, could be clean wood chips or clean bark.
Now I'm just letting the leaves from this cherry, this ornamental cherry, just drop down here. I've even blown them off of the pathway so that they can be mulching this perennial bed pretty nicely.
I do not have a lawn to consider mulch or no mulch. If I did, I would probably want to remove a thick layer of leaves from that lawn. Otherwise, the grass that's struggling, trying to do its best during the winter season, will have no chance or very little chance. So I would just rake those off and compost them on site instead of leaving them on a lawn.
In this little area, I have some daffodil bulbs planted, and I've used pine needle mulch from some pine trees that I have, just raking up underneath them to make a kind of a clean pathway, walkway area. And then I just relocated the mulch here. The daffodils, the bulbs will not have any problem coming up in the springtime, and gives it a kind of a neater appearance next to the sidewalk and keeps the weeds away. Now, something I do with a container that maybe can't quite go into the greenhouse and I want to just extend its life a little bit more is I'll use some cut evergreen boughs to act as a little bit of a mulch to take up some of that airspace, reduce any effects of wind that might be chilling those plants a little bit too much. So mainly that's just for a little bit of insulation, where I've just stuck those into the soil, tucked them around, even on this pot here of some rudbeckia that I had in there. I just laid that bough on top of it, and it can provide a little bit of protection.
So many things will be just fine if you leave the leaves where they drop, with the exception of anything that you might be wanting to protect from disease for the next season, or something like the sedums, like those succulent ground covers that might just have too much from one tree dropping all of its leaves straight down, or on a lawn area. Those are areas you may really want to remove anything that might be acting as a mulch. Otherwise, embrace those things that drop the needles and the leaves, as long as they're healthy, to provide a really nice addition and protection for your wintertime garden. Well, a little bit about mulch. Hope not too mulch. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed that, and there's always more to learn in the garden. Bye-bye.